Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
Hello and welcome to Empire Builders. Well, since the creation of Airbnb, more and more people have been making money from residential property investing, and for some of them that means turning their home into an investment as well, rather than leaving it vacant. Well, on today's show we're going to hear from someone that's turned renting properties into their whole business and doing it for other people. So please welcome Alex Ormerod from Luxeco. Welcome.
Thanks
for joining us. So let's start off. Tell me basically, what does the company Luxeco do?
So in a nutshell, Luxeco is opening the doors to Australia's most beautiful homes whilst their owners are out of town. So in addition to providing fabulous accommodation for corporate and leisure travellers, we also have the full concierge service that you would expect from a hotel. So it's an ideal service for someone who's used to the service of a hotel, but they're looking for the space and amenity of a private home. So you could think of us as one big hotel where all of our rooms are situated in different geographic areas, with a front office that you tend not to see face to face, but that it's there to support you as a guest.
So it's a kind of a new concept that people haven't heard of. So how does the whole thing start?
Good question. So my husband and co-founder Tom and I have always been frequent travellers. So when we had children, it came as a huge shock to us to find that hotels were suddenly dead to us. I'm sure many new parents have had that experience where it's not really logistically suitable to be travelling with a small child in the same room with you, or it's not ideal anyway. So we suddenly found ourselves in the position where we were looking at serviced apartments and at the time, probably hotel or holiday accommodation that was self-managed, and what you saw online wasn't necessarily what you got. It was a bit of potluck. And there was also absolutely no service attached to it because these properties were typically being rented out by traditional real estate agents. So we felt there was a really big gap in the market from a guest's or traveller's perspective. And then from the other side, when we travelled, we tended to rent our own home out and found that doing it ourselves was difficult. Communicating with guests when you're remotely travelling overseas is a bit of a challenge in itself. And finding a property manager, again, within the real estate realm, who provided any level of service was also a challenge for us. So we felt there was a gap on both sides of the market, and an opportunity existed to fill those gaps.
Yeah, I mean, we've just been away over kind of Christmas, and again, having with kids, then you need 2 rooms, and then it's suddenly expensive, and then you've got to get interconnecting rooms.
Yep.
And it is actually pretty hard, isn't it?
And it's usually more cost effective to have a home than to be renting 2 or 3 hotel rooms. So even for multi-generational groups or families with older children who could potentially be in a hotel, hiring 3 hotel rooms suddenly becomes cost prohibitive compared to renting a whole home where you can all be together.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of people have heard of Airbnb and stays and things like that, which are kind of global companies. So what's the main difference, and I guess why would people use you?
So Airbnb and HomeAway and Stays are online travel agents effectively. They're marketing platforms online. So those guys are important partners. We work very closely with Airbnb and Stays and the HomeAway group as part of our retail marketing strategy. So this is sort of the first go-to point usually for guests looking at booking their own accommodation. Research suggests that people tend to that the search process could extend to up to at least sort of over 50 different search points online, searching different platforms, and we certainly find that promoting our properties on those online travel agents that we'll often get the same traveller sending an inquiry through 5 or 6 different portals to demonstrate that they are shopping around looking for the best deals. Whereas, as I said, Luxeco is the full end-to-end service. So whilst we have our own website, yes, we're more about the actual service and the experience. So it's not just about facilitating the booking, but actually delivering the service to the guest from the lead up to them arriving, during their stay and after their stay, as well as looking after the property owners of the homes that we're renting out.
So because I've never actually used Airbnb, obviously see it and it looks an amazing business. So if I was booking on that, I'm then reliant on their homeowner that maybe have never rented their home out at all,
Yep.
probably being overseas at the same time, and I've got no customer service, I've got no issues, or nowhere to go to. So if I booked it effectively the same place but through you rather than Airbnb, you're there to kind of facilitate things and iron out problems and find cleaners or whatever else.
Absolutely. So guests can opt to book our properties through Airbnb and the online travel agents. Obviously, there are portal commissions involved in those sorts of transactions, so the cost's not always comparative. But irrespective of where they book through, they get the Luxeco service. I guess comparing the other options that they might have on those platforms, take Airbnb as your example there. If I'm looking on Airbnb for a property, I'm comparing properties within a geographic location. Those properties might be managed by Luxeco or another property manager. They might be managed by somebody who lives in that property and is consequently, as you say, not going to be there to troubleshoot any issues that arise. It's a bit of potluck, so you've got to really be quite careful as a consumer in doing your research, looking at the reviews of the host, as they're called on Airbnb, and looking at who you're actually renting that property from, and perhaps asking some questions about how you'll gain access and how issues will be resolved in the absence of the property owner or manager when you're actually there on site, so that you have some comfort that you're going to be looked after. So that's why people tend to book with us once they've found us. There's a certain level of comfort and assurance that they're going to have a great service. We have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week on-call concierge. We meet and greet guests on site. It's quite extensive, the level of service that we provide, and compared to other hosts and property managers that you'd be renting your property from, that's why we tend to get people booking with us. Again, we've got about a 15% repeat booking rate, which is quite high for the industry, because once people have stayed with us once, they tend to want to stay with us again. It just makes it easy for them.
Yeah, look, I think there's a massive opportunity, because we've looked at renting our place out over Christmas, and just the thought of dealing with Joe Public, it's just a headache for a lot of people.
And that's how we end up with so many great property listings. For the sort of designer and luxury end of the property market, the owners don't tend to want to be self-managers. They don't want to have contact with the guest or deal with the headaches in getting their property guest ready. So we take that headache away for them.
Yeah, and I guess if I'm getting a premium for my property anyway, to pass some of it on, I'm still getting a premium anyway, so it's all a net benefit.
Yeah, well, we like to think that the premium service and brand, the Luxeco brand, allow us to maximise the rate and the rental yield for those homeowners.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So who are the typical kind of guests for these type of properties?
So anyone who would typically need to book more than one hotel room is a good gauge. So those families, corporate relocations are a big market, VIPs, celebrities and corporate executives. We've had prime ministers, but our bread and butter typically families and groups travelling who require 2 or 3 or more bedrooms at once.
So it sounds as if it'll kind of work out financially as well. And how long would people stay? Like, some people might stay, 6 to 9 months, or is it a couple of weeks?
So typically our guests would stay anywhere from 3 nights or even sometimes 2 nights right through to 2 or 3 months, depending on the location of the property. Anything over 2 or 3 months, I say 2 or 3 because the legislation's different in different regions, but you typically would need to have a lease agreement in place for longer stays, which we can also do. I think the average booking tends to be around 12 nights. But it really does vary from property to property. You'll find down in coastal beachside locations over summer, usually there's a 7-night minimum, but throughout the rest of the year you would typically find people are going there for weekends. So the occupancy and the length of stay varies seasonally as well.
Sure. Now, you mentioned some of the other services you provide. Can you kind of embellish on some of those? What are some of those things?
So anything you would expect to get from a hotel and then more. We have really focused on the experience, the guest experience as being the core to our brand. So we recognise that fantastic accommodation is just the first step to a really memorable holiday. So in addition to the on-call concierge service, we have everything from our own housekeeping teams, so we can provide the daily housekeeping services that you'd get in a hotel, right through to we do a lot of in-home dining. We've got relationships with top chefs from Chef's Hatted restaurants, who can come into the properties, create menus for small or large groups and cook their meals for them, right through to bespoke travel itinerary planning for some of our guests. So if you can dream it, you can do it. We've done everything right through to arranging private surfing lessons with well-known international surf
And I'm sure you've got
stars.
to test some of these things out yourself just to make sure they're all good.
I'd love to say that I've tested them all, but that would be fantastic. But it's really fun working with our guests to create new experiences, and part of that does come down to the service. So our dedicated guest services team make a point of knowing why our guests are coming and really understanding their objectives to be able to make suggestions, but also to come up with some really great, fun new experiences.
What are some of the
for them.
unusual things that you might have come across?
Well, one that I know will be close to your heart, Chris, is things like race car drive days, private helicopter and seaplane charters. We've done having a private sommelier in the house with wine tasting with wines that aren't available on the retail market, so really high-end type stuff. And as I say, the in-home dining experiences are really, really popular.
So
across
it's a
the
whole
board.
events kind of company at the same time as well, almost.
It's events, it's logistics, it's pretty much all that and more.
Sounds good. So look, just because Airbnb's around these days, it doesn't mean that you can't duplicate or even try and change things and come up with your own way of either renting your own home or renting your own investment property and trying to get a better return by offering different things. Well, join us after the break as we'll delve more into what kind of properties are going to work best, and we'll get some more ideas on Alex's business to see how they're looking at making the most of the market. So join us again soon. Welcome back to Empire Builders. Today we're joined by Alex Ormerod from
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.